The affirmer is a manifestation of paranoid projections of ourselves onto the threats around us. They create the idea of threats that are going to go on. They try and get out their cyber security and cyber terrorism threats by saying that they conceded it won't happen. That is our link. They have agreed with us that there's no way that would ever occur. But they present an academic artifact in the 1AC that this thing is true, and that is a reason why we should act in a justification for action, and then conceded that first of all those were constructed, and second of all that there is no world where that happened. If they win all their falsifiability evidence, they have conceded evidence that falls within that on the case, but not going to be able to access that. They're not going to win, and all of their threats are going to be justified. First of all, is the economy impact, which is the second argument, the second impact that they're saying. They concede the Dewdney evidence that there is no empirical basis for this argument going to be justified. This was also in the 1NR. They're just trying to use it as a justification for the third argument is the terrorism argument. Need say more Mueller evidence, which has still had no answer. 1 in 3 billion chance, but still we need to act. There is something that needs to be done, something that justifies action. That is an interrogation that must be done before we can actually take action like the plan tries to be able to get to. The framing issue for this debate is going to be the fact that there is a sequencing issue of the framework debate. The ability to access those things. We turn all of their offense because we are able to roleplay and do all of those things. First, we have to have the intellectual, but that's going to be further down. First, I'm going to do the uniqueness debate that they're trying to make. There's no uniqueness for their impacts that they can't justify those impacts taking place. They can't have uniqueness for the cybersecurity threat, any of those things, because there has been no analysis. So they say they analyze the interaction of those things. That doesn't make any sense when they have agreed that a lot of their impacts have been constructed in this around the ability to do that. They say superior for ballot framing. First of all, the Jord evidence was conceded. This is evidence is fantastic. It says that you must justify your actions before you take the action. They cannot justify a ballot if they cannot justify the way that they get to those impacts. So first of all, the fact that there's super low probability of anything that they were talking about is just a reason to project that. The second is the Jones evidence, which was conceded as of the 2AC, that the role of the judge is one of a critical intellectual. Even if they win their framework, it means you are not a policymaker. First, you have to start from a stance of a critical intellectual. Even if you're considering a policy option, you have to consider that policy option from a critical intellectual. This is distinct from the rest of the framework that are not going to be able to act. Now, the bulk of the 1AR on this, even though they undercovered the entire thing, is this argument of the relativism and the acting on the policies. First is the Bilgin and the Bruce and Cheeseman evidence were both conceded. The Bilgin evidence, first of all, social change, the ability to actually act on these things. Fiat is not really conceded. The AHD evidence that Fiat is extra topical. Nothing leaves this round. Nothing that we do. Fiat is illusory. This is a K trick, but they dropped it. This means that the fact that we are the only ones acting internally to social change is the only one that's going to be able to solve. If they prove their impacts are true, we solve better because we're able to act upon that. The Bruce and Cheeseman evidence turns all their policy making arguments because it talks about the prerequisite to formulating policies is discussing those policies from the stance of a critical intellectual ability to look at us. We do not preclude this new role-playing argument that they make. Rather, we set the stage for a better form of role-playing. We are an internal linker to a better form of all of their offense. They don't have any unique offense, the ability to do this, hold the 1AR to what was there. They extended a permutation that was not in the 2AC, and it doesn't make any sense because this is not an advocacy. It's a question of the role of the judge and the role of what you do within the round. Now, the defense of the representations argument, which is the last thing that she extends, is that, first of all, this some representations might be true, but I like to think that that's because we never got to them, because looking at the 1AC, none of those are true. They say that threats are real, but they've conceded multiple of their threats are not real. The terrorism, like I said, the 1 in 3 billion, the ability to access any of those arguments, the ability to do that. Now, they've conceded a serial policy failure argument that talks about the focusing on intellectual, not focusing on intellectual first, and trying to just jump into policy. First of all, leads to dogmatism because we never question the actions that we are taking. That is an out-of-round impact about the way that we confront debate as a space. The second is a policy failure because we do not analyze them. They are always going to fail because if we acted on a cyber security threat, a cyber terrorism threat, as after the 1AC, then that would have meant nothing because they have agreed with us that there's no world where that would ever happen. That is, the threats are going to be able to do that. Now, they can see the Jordan evidence also said the representations for ability to have the access to those kinds of arguments, ability to talk about that.
Also, on Cook, we're not an alternative one. Second, default how we encourage a good political process.
Okay, the Cook evidence, which is all the policy-making arguments, is that we do not preclude the idea of a lack of alternative where we do not act. They can see that we lead to more social change. That was the Bilgin evidence. Every piece of evidence that was in the 2AC had a lot of answers. The 1AR did not really connect. Also, those.
And also the Cook card is in the context of how we relate to those policies. Which is exactly what
the Cook card is about relating to the policies. We access that. The only offense that was in the 2AC is this hard evidence, and then you can see we're the only ones that actually effectuate change if we can decide if those impacts and those threats are real or whether they're paranoid projections. That should be the litmus test for what we should act upon.